That's the worst thing you can do.
Our spouse is not the solution.
Right. Yes.
You had to change your celebrity crush.
Yeah, I totally
for
did.
me.
All that does is it robs you of celebrating the good that is in your relationship or that is in your spouse.
Marriage is so much more humbling, blesses the whole marriage,
sets
and sets a tone.
Yep.
You're listening to Let's Get Naughty,
a podcast for real talk and honest conversations about all things relationships and marriage. The good, the bad, and the naughty.
Whether you're already married, almost married, or wanting to get married, we're here to help you build a solid foundation for a love that lasts. Let's get naughty, y'all.
All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Let's Get Naughty. We are really excited about today's episode. This is one of the ones we've been thinking about for quite a while. We are going to share things we wish we knew before we got married.
And we have a lot of them.
We have a lot of them. We spent some time planning out what we're going to say. We had to cut ourselves off because we have so much to share. Obviously, in a lot of ways, everything we ever share on this podcast, kind of gets lumped into things we wish we knew before we got married, just because it's all marriage wisdom, right? But we've tried to think really specifically, before we got married, what did we not know that we know now that we wish we knew then?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's, everybody who's dating or engaged thinks that they know what to expect in marriage, and there's always something different. And so I think this is a really fun conversation for people who are engaged or dating, just to have conversations and hopefully have conversations around something maybe they didn't expect, or maybe that they did, and just to confirm and to review some of those things that they might have already thought were going to be things they faced. And then I think it's also fun for married couples, because I think as married couples, we've all gone through these things. And so I think it can be fun for a couple to sit down and look at what they've learned in their marriage.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So that's a great point. This is not just for people who aren't married. I think that married friends are going to appreciate this episode. And we'd love to hear from you guys if you're already married, what you wish you knew, if you agree with the things we're sharing. I mean, this is all a conversation. So we have so much. We have so much.
Yeah, we do.
Should we just dive in?
Yeah, Let's jump into the first one.
I will say, preface this with, some of this is probably things you have heard people say before, right? There's some general marriage wisdom that people will share with you before you get married that you've probably heard. But I feel like a lot of this is stuff that no one really told us or thought to share with us, that we kind of had to learn on our own. So this will be good.
Yeah.
This will be good.
This is a fun one.
Okay. We are starting out with a banger. Because this is, no question, the number one thing I had to learn through marriage. Do you know what it is?
Conflict.
Specifically, the idea, the truth, that conflict is not failure. How hard was this for me when we first got married?
Oh, this is so hard. And I don't think it was just you. I think this is one of those widely misunderstood concepts about marriage, is that so many people, when they, you ask, oh, well, how's your relationship? Oh, well, we don't have conflict, so it's a great relationship.
Totally. People say that all the time. Oh, we never fight.
If you're not fighting and if you're not having conflict, that's probably a sign that you're just bearing things, and that's not something you can do when you get married. And so learning to have healthy conflict is so important.
Well, I feel like what you just said, even though it's true, you said, if you're not fighting, that's probably not a good thing. I would argue that you can have conflict without fighting. We don't fight very often. That's true. As what people think of fighting as. We don't fight very often, but we have disagreements, and we have times daily, weekly, all the time, where we're rubbing up against each other. Totally. And we have to kind of work through differences, right? So I consider conflict all of those things. It's not just what people think of as fighting, arguments, yelling, screaming,
Yeah, and I think it's a great point. I think conflict is something that often comes before fighting, and so handling that well.
That's so true.
And not just trying to sweep it under the rug is the point to handle before it turns into fighting.
Yeah. So something that we share a lot with the couples that we mentor is just to like really process before you get married what your perspective of conflict is and how it was very likely informed by what you saw in your household growing up. So this is one area where Kashmir and I are very different from our backgrounds. Like your family was more confrontational. They weren't afraid to like throw stuff out there, and they were more explosive, and conflict happened a lot in your household, right? Like,
oh, absolutely.
Yeah. My household, like we never had conflict. I never saw my parents fight. Like my brother and I were like, my brother just got married, and his, like one of his friends, her friends was like, did you and your brother like ever fight? I'm like, no, like we got along so well. We were like those weird siblings that never argued. So we just had a very like conflict-free home, but it definitely gave me the idea coming into marriage that conflict was bad. And I wasn't comfortable with it. I didn't know how to do it well. And so I really struggled. I would say especially the first year of marriage, maybe the first couple, with believing anytime we had like any kind of minor conflict, disagreement, that it was a sign that our marriage was not healthy and something was wrong and we had to fix it. Like conflict meant failure in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, and that was just a perception you held on to for a long time.
Yeah.
Where my natural tolerance for conflict was a lot higher. And
totally.
So,
and that is still true. Like, even as we've grown together in our marriage, we both still have different thresholds for conflict.
Yeah.
I'm very sensitive.
You moved from like on a scale of 1 to 10, your threshold being a 0 to a 1.
No, it's a little higher than a 1.
All right. We'll go with 1.5 or 2.
Yeah. No, that's so true.
Where I feel like I was always I was always the peacemaker of my family, but I'm still naturally much more accepting of higher levels of conflict and frustration.
Yeah.
And so being frustrated and having a conversation of frustration can be totally normal to me, where it wasn't to you. Like if I expressed any frustration, we were in conflict and
oh yeah.
That was conflict.
Yeah, for sure. And so I think what's important here is understanding conflict can do two things. Conflict can grow the divide between you wider, right? Like conflict can cause division and it can widen your division. But if conflict is handled well and you use conflict as an opportunity to understand each other better and grow closer and forgive and offer grace and reconcile, conflict actually bonds us closer together, right? Like, I think that a lot of people have the idea that conflict is just the division side, but it's like the reconciliation of conflict is actually what bonds you closer together and helps you grow a deeper love and affection for each other. And so I like to think now, 5 years into marriage, I love you more today than I did the day we got married. Not in spite of our conflicts that we've had, but actually because of them, like because of arguments, disagreements, hardships, things that we've gone through, because of the repetition of reconciling, forgiving each other, offering grace, coming together, like seeking to understand each other. That has brought us closer together, and that has grown our love for each other.
And I think that's something that couples don't realize, that good marriages and bad marriages have patterns in them. And so much of it isn't a single event or a single argument. It's the pattern of how those are handled, where when they're handled poorly, you just become more bitter and frustrated and just start separating and becoming less close with each other. But when those are handled, you're building bridges to each other in your way, and you come closer. And so not only are you more closer knit, but when you do have a rub or you have a bigger conflict than just a small rub, you've already built these bridges where, hey, I know this is the bridge that we have used over and over again to come back together and to have unity.
Yep. Totally. Oh my gosh. I mean, we could do so many podcast episodes specifically just on that concept and like what it looks like to bridge that gap and reconcile and forgive. And so we'll get into that. But yeah, you're so right that it's patterns. And so I have to remind myself all the time, and this is what I like to tell couples, healthy marriages aren't free of conflict. They just know how to handle conflict well, and they reconcile quickly and effectively through their conflicts, because you are two different people. You and I, we are different people. We have different desires, different wants, different needs, different ways our brains function. And we are two broken, sinful people. And so when we come together and try to be one unit, like, of course, that's going to cause issues. Like, if you think that your marriage is never going to have conflict, like, that's literally never going to happen. It's just, how do you work through it?
If you're married or dating and you want to grow closer together, don't look at conflict as failure. Look at conflict as an opportunity, and take the small disagreements, the things that there's not deep hurts in, and things like that, where you can start to build those patterns of reconciliation, and then those build and they grow and they grow. And then you're a good communicator and a good conflict resolver.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, working through the small things helps you navigate the harder things too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Another thing I think we needed to learn going into marriage was that marriage won't fix your problems.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Amen times 1,000. That is a huge misconception that we see people have. I mean, I think I had that to an extent too. I think we think that our problems that we have when we're single are going to be remedied by having a spouse who loves us, and like being married is going to fix that. So this can look like a lot of different things. Two examples we'll share that we see most often, and these are gendered generalizations that it's not true across both genders. You might not relate, but with women, we often see body image stuff. This is something I talk to a lot of women about in my nutrition work, obviously. Like, if you struggle with loving your body, believing that you're worthy, feeling comfortable in your skin, and you think that having a husband who loves you is just going to fix that, like, it's not. In fact, having a husband who you share yourself with, having another person there that is now a part of you, adds this extra layer of complexity and accountability to figuring out how you feel in your body. And so we see that with women. With men, there's another side of that similar coin, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think a lot of men come in and, you know, they say, hey, I have a wife now, and, you know, marriage is a place for sex, and now my lust and, you know, any of my past lust sins or desires there are just going to go away. You know, if
because I have a wife.
Yeah, we've talked to men who said, oh yeah, I struggled with porn, or you know, just lustful thoughts, you know, really anything in the lust sin pattern, and just expecting that now that you have a wife that those things go away. That is just one of the biggest lies out there.
Totally.
Because you're still going to struggle with that, and whatever you bring in expecting your wife to fix is going to be very hurtful, not only to yourself, but to your wife, if you're expecting your wife to fix those issues that you have.
Right.
And so these are two great examples of things that we can expect our spouse to fix, but there's really so many things that we expect.
Sure.
And so, you know, these are just two ones that we see as patterns. But whatever you're expecting, whatever hole in yourself that you're expecting your spouse to fill, they're not going to be able to do that. Like, you have to, you know, most of the time we see that as a Jesus-sized hole in someone that only Jesus can fill. And people try and put their spouse in that role to replace that. And so that's just one of our recommendations
Yeah.
going into marriage, is to look at that hole that you're expecting your spouse to fill and change those unfair expectations of what your spouse is going to do, and instead work on that with yourself, and seek help, seek Jesus in that, and to work on it that way.
Yeah. And so I want to have a disclaimer here that you don't have to be sinless and perfect going into marriage. In fact, that's another thing that we fight couples on, that, or, a lie that we see couples coming into marriage thinking that they have to be perfectly sorted out before they can marry themselves to another person. And that's not true, because we're going to be broken for the rest of our lives. Like, I'm never going to be faultless. And when you marry someone, you're committing to love them through their brokenness. And so you don't have to have everything figured out before you get married. But the worst thing you can do is to go into marriage thinking like, oh, well, I really struggle with body image issues, but it's going to go away when I get married. Or like a man, oh, I really struggle looking at porn or desiring other women, but it's going to go away when I have a wife. It'll be fine then. That's the worst thing you can do. It's not to say you have to be sinless going into marriage, but don't put that expectation on your spouse. Work through it before, like do as much healing as you can before you get married, and know that whatever you bring into your marriage, you're bringing into your marriage. And so I love what you said about believing that our spouse is going to fill these holes that we have. I think it's a Tim Keller quote where he says, like, whatever you love, anything you love more than God, you're going to crush it under the weight of your expectations. Like, anytime we try to put, that's something we often do with our spouses. We believe, like, obviously on this earth, you're the person that I love the most, that is supposed to love me the most. But if I expect you to fix me, that is not healthy for either of us, because you can't. And so it's my job to like work through that with the Lord in my own heart and soul. And with that, like, you are my warrior partner in battle. Like, this is something that is beautiful about marriage, is like, you are in this with me. And so you are a gift the Lord has given me to help me fight my like the lies in my head about my body. And so you can be in that with me and like help encourage me, remind me of truth, and, pray over me and remind me of scripture. Like, you can be in that fight with me, but I can't expect you to fix it for me.
Yeah, I think that's a great distinction. As a spouse, I think we can be encouragers and help each other with whatever we're working on, but our spouse is not the solution.
Right. Yes. Amen. Amen.
Yeah.
Preach. Look, y'all, with divorce rates near 50%, there is no question getting married is one of the biggest decisions you'll ever make.
That is why we created Ready to Not, our premarital course to help you build a solid foundation for a lasting marriage.
You'll take the world's leading relationship assessment, get a personalized report on the strengths and growth areas of your relationship, and watch lessons where we help you understand your results and give you tools and exercises to grow in 9 different areas.
This is designed to give you structure to have the important conversations you need to have and to get clear on your expectations in everything from finances to family, conflict, sex, roles, faith, and so much more.
Research has proven that investing your time in a course like this will increase your marriage success rate by 30%. Don't just prepare for your wedding day. Invest time preparing for the lifelong marriage that will follow it.
And if you're already married, can we just say that this would make an amazing wedding gift? With Ready to Not, we'll help you move into marriage with clarity and confidence.
And a special discount just for Let's Get Naughty listeners, go to knottedmarriage.com/ready-to-knot and use code LGK25 for $25 off. That's knottedmarriage.com/READYTOKNOT and use code LGK25 for $25 off.
Now back to the episode.
All right, number 3 on our list. This is something I'm sure you've heard before and you've probably been told before, but in relation to marriage, this is definitely something we had to both learn in different areas. And that is comparison is the thief of joy.
As someone who's dating or engaged, well, mostly in dating, right? Coming from the dating culture, so much of what you look at is comparison. You're comparing potential partners, you're looking around, and you're always looking at what are the options. And that's
right.
part of like how your brain has been wired being single.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you're getting married, you have new comparisons. You have, hey, we have, my parents had this amazing relationship and I want my relationship to just look just like that. And so I'm going to compare my relationship to my parents or to my friends who never fight. They have an amazing relationship. Or even better, what does that couple on Instagram look like who's always traveling around? They have endless money and a perfect relationship. Or another great example is movies.
Oh, yeah. I mean, culture, media, all those things inform our expectations that we will compare ourselves, our relationship to, our spouse to. So I think we've experienced this in multiple levels. Like a great example that you shared is comparing our relationship to our parents. Mostly me. I've done that one because I admire a lot about my parents' marriage. And so I came into marriage like having that blueprint that I saw and expecting things to look the same way. And my dad did the laundry in our household, and that's not exactly a task you will ever do.
I have done a few loads of laundry in our 6 years of marriage.
How many of them were done when I was out of the country?
We don't need to get into the details of that.
You did try to help me fold laundry the other day.
Yeah, I hung up a few clothes.
It was comical.
Okay, so just quick sidebar on laundry. Like, guys' clothes are so easy. It's like pants, shorts, shirt, you put it on the hanger. But I don't know if you guys like know about women's clothes. Like, you're like, this thing twists. Is it like a skirt, a shirt, a dress? Is it a sports bra? Like, I'm just even a sports bra is like so confusing. You're like, what's in and out? And it's like all twisted.
Yeah,
and
you were hanging out my sports bras. It's comical. It's comical. I think I took a photo. I'll see if I can insert it or share it on Instagram. It's quite funny. Let's just say, Cashmere does not do the laundry in our marriage. You contribute in other amazing ways. You did warn me. When we were dating, I did not see you do much laundry. So I did not come into our marriage thinking that you would do the laundry. But even with that, my dad doing the laundry, as silly as it sounds, like I know that is a way that he showed our family that he loved us and was trying to care for us. And so I still caught myself, even though I knew when I married you, you were not going to be doing the laundry. I still caught myself thinking like, oh, well, is this how he should be showing me he loves me?
Yeah. And then the next logical step of that question is, so if he's not doing the laundry, does that mean he doesn't love me?
Right. So, I mean, again, that's a silly example, but I think we see comparison being the thief of joy on so many levels, right? So like comparing your relationship to other people's, comparing your spouse to other women or men, that's obviously a terrible thing to do.
Yep.
It's easy to, but it's very dangerous. Even in good ways, like with our last group, when we talked about this, something I acknowledged was that I don't feel like I struggle like comparing you with like movie stars or something because you're just as handsome.
Well, of course, it's because I look just like your celebrity crush.
Cashmere has been told that he looks like Chris Pratt, and he actually, like, I feel like you more than look like him, you like kind of act like him a little bit. You guys are definitely similar. So I tell him that Chris Pratt is therefore my celebrity crush.
Yeah, I feel like you had to change your celebrity crush.
Yeah, I totally did. I love you. So I don't feel like I struggle with comparing you like looks wise or something to other men. What I've caught myself doing is even in what feels like maybe it could be walking the line of something that could be healthy but is not, is even like comparing you and the ways that you lead me and lead our family and serve our family with other men, and their gifts and talents in service. Like,
Yeah,
I've
absolutely.
shared that the ways that you lead as the spiritual leader in our family doesn't necessarily look the same as every other man out there. And especially like some men who like serve at our church, or ways that I've like kind of been given a blueprint of how I think that you therefore should be leading us. And that's not how God wired you. Those aren't the gifts that he gave you. And so I shouldn't be comparing you to other men and saying like, well, you should be leading us this way, because that's not how you were made. And so that's where I think comparison can be a little sneakier, right?
I think there's a lot of small ways of comparison that like we don't always even realize, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that can lead to frustrations. And as we work through things like jobs, and as Molly's been an entrepreneur, you know, it's so, you know, her job has looked so much different than someone who's following a traditional career.
Yep.
And so that's another example of, hey, it's easy to be like, well, why don't you look like this person? And why does your trajectory look so much different?
Yeah. Right. It's so true. Yeah. There's so many layers to that.
And so I think just being aware of, we are such creatures of comparison, and that is something that we do. We're competitive, we're jealous, and we just naturally compare. And it's just not a healthy, loving thing to judge everything your spouse does and to hold them to all of these unfair standards.
Right. Because all that does is it robs you of celebrating the good that is in your relationship or that is in your spouse, because we're all unique. Our marriages are unique and different and have different gifts and talents and strengths and weaknesses. And so when we compare, all we're doing is neglecting the uniqueness of what could make our relationship good by trying to make it like something else.
Yeah. I think it's an attitude towards marriage. I think when people are looking at comparison, there's a negative attitude of, why isn't my spouse this, or why aren't we this?
Yeah.
And I think there's just so much more benefit to looking at, hey, look at everything that my spouse and we are now, and look at all the ways we're growing.
Yeah. It's good. All right. And next one, number 4, things we wish we knew before we got married. Or I should say too, like something I really had to learn in marriage is this. And I think I already said this in maybe episode 2. Humility is always the answer. Like truly, fundamentally, marriage, real, healthy, unifying marriage is built on a foundation of mutual humility.
Marriage is so much more humbling than what you would expect. You realize what a selfish person and what a broken person you are in marriage, because marriage is just like a mirror and a reflecting glass that's just showing you everything that is wrong with you, because there's just nowhere to hide.
Right. Yeah, there's nowhere to hide. And you see yourself reflected back because of your spouse. Like, it's just, I have learned more about myself in marriage, in 1 year of marriage, than I did my whole life before being married to you, because it just forces you to know yourself better. It makes you so keenly aware of yourself. This is a great example of an area in which I think our culture and our world just has marriage wrong, because we're definitely taught the idea that two people coming into marriage, like, it's all about, what can you do for me? Are you here to make me happy? Are you going to just let me do my thing and be there to have a little fun with and share some joy with? Like, that's not actually the picture of marriage that we've been called to. I know it sounds like challenging and like it's not as fun, but we've learned that when we both step into our marriage from a position of humility, which really is just I like the quote that says humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's just thinking of yourself less. It's just the forsaking of self. It is just leaving behind your own selfish desires and wanting to hold your spouse higher than yourself. When two people come together from a position of humility, wanting to serve each other and love each other selflessly, I mean, how much easier is our marriage when we both do that? It is literally like joyful and easy, and not because humility is easy, but because then marriage and loving and serving each other feels easy. And we get so much more joy out of it when we both like come from that place.
Yeah. And I think humility is very interesting because it's when one person approaches marriage with just humility, it's infectious. And if one person is bringing it, there's just this is a big word for me, but aroma.
Wow.
Yeah.
Look at you with your flowery, beautiful language.
Yeah, I'm proud of that.
It's so true.
And that just like blesses the whole marriage, and it sets the tone.
Yep. So true. Yeah. When I'm feeling stubborn about something, but you choose humility and you choose to just come from a place of like laying down yourself and wanting to serve me and love me, and through your words and your actions, you show me that, like, it is so disarming. Like my wall immediately melts and I want to do the same for you. And so in conflict, humility is the answer, right? Like anytime there's conflict, I mean, we kind of already said this, but conflict literally is when two people who want different things come together and try to make something work with two people who want different things. So if you can both step into conflict with humility, where you lay down your selfish desires and seek the betterment or the mutual goal of unity, I just think the answer to marriage, anything in marriage, is humility. Because that's exactly what it is. We're called to that like sacrificial love and that laying down of self to choose our oneness over my selfishness.
Yeah. I think it's been really fun to see in our marriage. I would say for the first few years of our marriage that I would have said that I probably led. I'm not a more humble person, but I think in moments I could show humility and just see my faults maybe better than you could.
Oh, yeah.
I think early in marriage,
I could not say I'm sorry, like, for the beginning of our relationship.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it.
Not well, right? Like you could kind of say, well, I'm sorry, but not
true.
Like, I'm sorry, I really mean this.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, you definitely did lay down in that.
But I feel like the leaderboard has shifted since those first few years. And I feel like in the last few months, we've been kind of aware of this, where that has shifted. And so I think that's a great example of just bringing humility in. And even if your spouse, that's not their first and greatest strength, that by you bringing it to the table, you can grow into it together. And it's just one of those things that you can grow in together. You can start to hold your opinion as less than your spouse's, and whatever your desires are as less than your spouse, and just hold your marriage above you as a person.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of it, is that by surrendering my selfishness, like to choose humility and seek oneness, like our oneness above my own singleness, like single whatever.
Yeah.
By choosing that, obviously there is some discipline and sacrifice that comes from that. And sometimes it means I don't get what I want. But normally it's actually me getting what I need. And it always produces more fruit than if I had just stuck to like seeking my own desires.
Yeah. Humility is just one of those things that can just transform how a couple interacts with each other.
Yeah. Yeah. We see that a lot in couples when they're struggling and stuck in cycles of conflict, like those patterns, like you said. basically is always rooted in a level of pride, like an inability to choose humility above self. And sometimes that's like hidden, right? Like it doesn't, pride is the other side of humility. It doesn't always look like what we think it does, but anytime we're asserting ourselves above our oneness.
I think something that's really interesting is that I would consider myself someone who just struggles with pride in general. And so just being proud and having somewhat of an ego and just being self-aware there doesn't mean that you can't bring humility to your relationship.
Yeah.
And so I think, pride is an overall thing that I'm working on, but just presenting my wife with humility is such a blessing to her.
Yeah. Thanks, babe.
Of course.
Okay, honestly, we have so much to share on this list of things we wish we knew before marriage that we are going to turn this into a 2-part episode.
Oh yeah, this is one that we could talk about for a while. But
and like every single one of these, we could do an entire episode just on that. Like we could dive into all of these deeper. So we will do that eventually. But part 2 is coming. We're gonna cut this off now. Should we do a super quick recap of these 4 that we started with?
Yeah, read those back to us.
Okay. Conflict is not failure. Marriage won't fix your problems. Comparison is the thief of joy. And humility is always the answer. Come on, those are good.
Those are good. So, married couples, again, we'd love to hear from you on our posts on Instagram.
Off.
Do those sound true to you? Is there ones that we missed that you want to hear in episode 2?
Yeah.
Or part 2, not episode 2.
Yeah, part 2. Next, we'll just do it the next episode. But yes, in the meantime, we'll post. If you're watching on YouTube, you can comment right below the video in the comments. But if not, we'll also post on our Instagram.
At Knotted Marriage.
And we'll leave a space for you guys to contribute to the conversation. Like you said, do you agree with what we shared? If you're not married, have people told you these before, or did any of these stand out to you? Do you have any you would like to see us share in part 2? Because we've got more coming, but we'd love to hear from you too.
Yeah, we look forward to hearing your comments, and tune in to our next episode and we'll get to part 2.
Yeah, we'll continue this conversation next week. So we'll see you then.
Thanks so much for hanging out with us for another episode of Let's Get Naughty.
Remember to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you want more encouragement, join us on Instagram and YouTube at Knotted Marriage to check out all the other resources we have to help you build a tighter marriage. If this conversation encouraged you in any way, please consider leaving us a review on whatever platform you're listening and posting a screenshot on social media. That support means more than you know and really helps us reach more couples.
We'll see you for next week's episode. Go get naughty!